Recording. So it's lovely to see everyone this morning. This is our 4th session. So if you'd like to carry on next week, please do sign up. We have 2 options. We've got the online version, which is just carrying on online, but also from the 17th of May, people can come into the studio. So there is an option on the website that says 2 sessions online, and then the 2 sessions when we do open up will be in person and you can come into the studio, and we'll be doing a combination of online and in person. Don't worry, I've done that before. I did it at SatGam. I had 15 people online and 8 people in the room and it worked fine. So let's come into our seat, cross-legged Sukhasana, a little bit of padding under the buttocks, whatever that may be. It could be a meditation cushion, it could be a bolster, it could be a block, it could be a folded up blanket, whatever works for you. And just come into a comfortable place to start with. And you may notice that all of you have a preference for which way you like to have your legs. So yoga is all about habits. Let's swap the legs over and see how that feels. Coming to the slightly odd side of crossing your legs, just allowing for the legs to be in a different position as they would do normally. So today's session is focusing on the 3rd diaphragm. So we've got that lovely pelvic diaphragm, which we're all familiar with, the respiratory diaphragm that we're becoming more familiar with, and then the vocal diaphragm, which is so similar to the other diaphragms in so many ways. Very similar if you look at a diagram of the vocal diaphragm to the pelvic diaphragm, interestingly. So they have the same kind of folds and crisscrossing musculature. So we'll be working with vocalizations, but before we work with vocalizations, we're going to try and ease up around the throat and obviously the interconnecting areas, the sternomastoid, including some of the basic exercises from Stanley Rosenberg. And we did do one of them last week. We did quite a strong basic exercise because there are varying levels. And I will take you through that gently because some people find this basic exercise too strong with the additional elements. So I'll just give you the stages for that. So we're working with the vocal diaphragm, really important. That is interconnected according to Polyvagal Theory with, so the eye muscles, the muscles of the neck. So we see we have this stress, tension, tendency to protect the access to the heart here, which creates this hunching of the shoulders. So we're trying to ease open that to come into a sense of safety and co-regulation. So we're co-regulating in a positive way, as opposed to maybe something that increases stress amongst others. So we're looking at that, and we're going to be looking at the full Kapalabati. So we've been staging Kapalabati because it's a tricky Kriya. So it's known as a Shat Kriya, but also a Pranayama. A Pranayama is something that extends and utilizes the breath. A Shat Kriya is a cleansing practice. Kapalabati is really powerful in the sense that it's energizing and it actually has this sense of cleansing or shining the front of the skull. So it's also known as skull shining breath or breath of fire. So you're getting into that prefrontal cortex area. The reason why we're prepping in this fashion is if you have stress and anxiety in a chronic state within the body, and that is your tendency, and it is very common in this modern day. I was this 15 or so years ago. It can increase that sense of panic to do Kapalabati, which is why I'm taking it very slow and trying to explain the anatomical, mechanical side so you can play with that yourself. So I'll be working with Kapalabati. One of the contraindications for Kapalabati is high blood pressure. Be cautious if you've had a hernia. So I know that is that's something you need to work with very gently if you've experienced a hernia in the abdominal region. And obviously surgery in that area, you've got to be cautious around that side of things. No one's had any surgery around the abdominal region as far as I know. So, and as long as you're a period of time, so I would say year post having a C-section, this is quite good for you, but it takes years, and it took years for me to heal properly after a C-section. I still have a tendency to pull in the side of the region of the musculature down there. So just be really cautious with your own bodies. enough talking, let's get started. So getting into this comfortable seat, and maybe close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you to do so. Make sure your hips are above the knees, so you have enough space to posteriorly tilt and anteriorly tilt. So there's nothing pulling on that lumbar region of the body. And you want the heart space around here to feel fairly open and light. But we're going to bring our hands to the heart space, so the sternum, the breastbone, and the hand around the belly, closing the eyes, and just notice how you feel today. Compiling a weather report on your body in this moment, just noticing what is settling, how that is settling, and allowing yourself the time to integrate a little bit more, creating the space for you to absorb the past week, and let that just be whatever it is. And then may feel a sense of lightness under the hand around the heart space, or indeed it might feel quite dense. And just notice that without trying to control or change anything. And the same underneath the hand on the belly. Begin to notice the air and the breath creating movement within the abdominal region and the chest region. And you might notice that it's actually quite still underhand. So see if you can cultivate a sense of movement. On the inhalation, breathing in through the nostrils. If your nostrils need a bit of a blow from the tissue, please use that. And a drawing inwards of the hands on the exhalation. Inhaling, breathing deep into the diaphragm and the belly, softening around the belly. No need to hold any bellies in or brace ourselves here. Just relax. And exhaling, allowing the hands to draw inwards. So we're becoming more and more aware of the breath and the function of the breath. And we're going to tap into the diaphragmatic breath, which is the breath that experiences the inhalation and the flattening of the diaphragm, the widening of the rib cage, the expanding sensation under the hand around the belly, and the exhalation with everything drawing into the center. And when we work in this fashion with the diaphragm, we really are utilizing this core that people speak of. We often are talking about the musculature when we're talking about the core, but actually the diaphragm is more important, it's more key. And as you well know, as I've discussed it with you, the pelvic diaphragm will be moving, as long as you're not holding, it'll be moving in time with the respiratory diaphragm. So come into that sense of breathing. As you inhale, those diaphragms are contracting and flattening. So you might feel that sense of pushing down, that pressure. Exhaling, that drawing up like a jellyfish, the diaphragm's dome. Inhaling, that flattening, and exhaling, that doming. So that drawing up of the pelvic diaphragm. So we're hopefully going to be breathing in this way throughout the session and utilizing the diaphragm fully. And you have this area of the diaphragm, the respiratory diaphragm, that attaches around this area, the front of the ribs, the side of the ribs, the spine. It massages the liver and the heart. So that's a really important function. The body really expects and needs for the diaphragm to massage the organs to keep the energy flowing. Sometimes we can come into a flipped breathing state, or a state where we're barely breathing at all. The anxiety state that we spoke about in the first session, where we're breathing into the top of the chest and everything is rather stiff around this area. So dropping the mind down into the body and noticing the breath as it enters. And the energy of the hara, which is this energy around the navel region, or the manipura chakra, which is a powerful center, but on the flip side is a powerful center towards shame. So it's a really important and key area to touch into. And we're trying to utilize all of the energy from the below chakras up the root chakras and the upper chakras. They come together at this Hara region, this Manipura, and are released out of this region. So it's a really key focus. And obviously underhand in the chest, we've got the center of compassion, of care, of empathy. And we're going to start with simply turning the head left or right, or left and right. So looking over to the left shoulder. How does that feel? How free and easy does the neck feel? Don't force anything. And turning to the right. Still breathing, quite free here. And how does that feel? So that's the second element to notice after your baseline with your weather report to how the neck is feeling. And you begin to get an idea of maybe how stressed you are, how tense you might be, or how relaxed you are. And we're going to bring this into a semicircle within the neck. So rolling the chin down towards the breastbone, opening up the back of the neck, coming into a slight Jaladhara bandha, and then rolling the right ear to the right shoulder. And there's no right or wrong way of doing this. You can pivot the chin, exploring the side of the neck. It doesn't need to be a simple line. You imagine that you have a pencil at the chin, and it's a spirograph. That line can be as swirly with as much movement as it needs to be. Coming into the semicircle from side to side, noticing any crunching. And I'm really noticing the sternomastoid, perhaps you are. Lovely. And coming to the other side. And then without crunching into the back of the neck, and I really do caution you here because we don't want to come into that sense of crunching, we're going to open around the front of the throat. So you're just opening and expanding and creating a space there as opposed to pointing the chin up at the ceiling. And then we're going to spiral, so circling with that mindful sense of opening around the throat. And then coming back to the center, as the chin meets the center, you come in the opposite direction. Breathing and maybe feeling the release in the shoulders as you come round to meet in the center again. Lovely. So this time we're going to come into a rotation. So the hands are going to be inhaled at the top of our heads. Reaching and lengthening under those armpits, really feel the stretch. And we're going to exhale, keeping those sitting bones down on the mat. Bringing the hands to the outside of the leg, and the left hand comes behind buttocks. And we're simply spiraling, remembering that rotation comes through the thoracic. There is no need to rotate into the lumbar, the sacroiliac. That needs to be quite rigid or bound. Breathing, inhaling, creating height in the spine. Exhaling and rotating, and the gaze and the chin just drops over towards that left shoulder. Again, noticing the neck and how this feels. Inhaling, rib cage expands and widens. Exhaling, sense of drawing inwards. And inhale those arms up overhead, come through the center. And exhale to the right hand side. Noticing how this rotation is compared to the other. Inhaling, grounding down through sitting bones. Exhaling and rotating from the thoracic, that mid area of the spine. Inhaling, exhaling, drawing inwards. Maybe there's a little bit more rotation here. Inhaling, creating height. And exhaling, drawing inwards. Inhaling, coming up towards the center. And let's just mindfully pad the hands in front of you, fairly cat-like, just exploring this forward fold for the first time this morning. How does that feel? You might want to bring the forehead down, or maybe you're more in a sphinx arms, wherever works for you is great. Just feeling into the back there. It may be a little bit achy. I know I am. And then pad the hands back to the center. Grounding down through the left hand here, reaching up through the right, coming into a lateral side bend or extension. Inhaling, lifting and gazing up at the right hand, exhaling, easing over, make sure the sitting bones are grounded. Really focusing on a lengthening here as opposed to how far we can come over to the side. Inhaling, spiraling breastbone up towards ceiling. Exhaling, experiencing that length between the sitting bone and the armpit. Inhaling, and let's exhale that hand back down. Inhaling, lengthening along the left seam of the body. Wake up those hands and those fingers. Exhale and coming to the opposite side. Gaze might come up towards the ceiling. If you're peeling open the breastbone towards the sky, relaxing the shoulder into the shoulder socket. Notice if you're really hyperextending out of the shoulder there. Inhaling, lengthening between sitting bone and armpit. Exhaling, grounding down through the left sitting bone. Lovely. And on the next exhalation, come through center. Now bring the hands onto the knee points and we're going to spiral. So imagining that the spine is like a pestle and the lovely bowl of the pelvis is like a mortar. And we're spiraling either clockwise or anti-clockwise. See if you can bring the shoulders into it and maybe bring the spine back. How much movement can we create? It's not just the spine, it's all around the shoulders here and the neck. And as we come back, let's come in the opposite direction. Lovely. Remembering to breathe into that lovely soft belly. No need to hold. Sometimes it's easier said than done when you've got tight leggings pushing in that area. So really press the belly against them. Lovely. And come up to the middle. So this is when we're going to come into the Stanley Rosenberg basic exercise. So knowing that the vagus nerve has this healing capacity. So the first stage here is to drop the left ear to the left shoulder and bring the left hand on top of the head. So it's on the side of the head, but we're not trying to push or pull or draw because we want this to be fairly gentle. The next stage is to draw the eyes to the corner of the eye socket, so up to the outer reaches of the room that you're in. You're rolling the eyes to the outer reaches. The reason we're doing that is we're utilizing the eye muscles to relax the neck muscles. So for some of you, you might be finding that you are moving into the parasympathetic nervous system, that state of rest and digest, where you're looking for a salivation or a shift in the energy state. This might be enough. If you need something stronger, we can bring the hand across the rib cage. And I know some students in the past have found this really strong. So if it's too strong, please don't do this. And then pulling into the rib cage. Super. And we can be here for 30 seconds, and it can be less, it can be long. I'm salivating already. So one of the key things that I look for now in my practice is whether I'm relaxed and salivating. Because we can, in our yoga practice, come into something that is quite the opposite of a state of rest and digest. We're really not trying to encourage that within this practice anyway. We're looking for nourishment rather than overextension of our energies. So you may find a sigh or there's a sense of wanting to yawn. Now that's positive. So if you're needing to yawn, please don't repress that. And then coming out on this side, removing the arm and removing the hand and the neck. Lovely. And if you're feeling a bit dizzy, like the eyes need to readjust, might be that it's a bit too strong for you, and please choose a gentler option. So we're going to do the same on the other side, bringing the right ear down to the right shoulder. The right hand comes to the right side of the head. And already you may feel the lovely extension along the sternomastoid and those muscles around the back of the neck, that when they are tight, they constrict the cranial nerves and then the social regulation system. So this is huge. The implications of this are massive. And bring the eyes to the left corner of the eye socket. And if you want to take it deeper, we utilize the hand and bring ourselves into this lateral bend. One of the oldest locomotive systems is the lateral movement. And the flexion and the extension came in hundreds of millions of years afterwards. So we evolved from coming out of the sea and being amoeba. And the reason why we want to retain energy rather than overextend ourselves is this is more than exercise. This is really about self-regulation and then co-regulation. And within the yoga texts, we talk about retaining and building prana within the body, not releasing it. So a disordered body or an ill body is someone who doesn't retain that energy and it just gets dispersed. And especially within the realms of trauma, you can feel too porous, that energy is dispersed and there's nothing kept for the individual. And it's not selfish, it's necessary. So just working with the eye, looking up at the left, noticing if you're salivating, if there's a shift in the energy state, or indeed whether you need to yawn, and just let that be. And then removing the arm, if you felt that shift, you can obviously stay here for longer, and release the head. So these exercises are really good to do on a regular basis rather than to do it once, do it hard, and then not do it again. Coming into your center position, we're going to test our necks. A very simple way of testing this, to look to the left, over the shoulder. Now, is there a change? Is there a difference? It may be subtle, it may be really obvious to you. It may be, if this is the first time that you've tried the exercise, that you're not really feeling a difference at all. And then look over to the right. How does it feel on this side? Now we've really eased. The aim here is to ease open this area. So when we come into our Kapalabati, and we're working really strongly with the shoulders as well in this session, we don't want to create extra tension. We want us to be in balance. So bringing the gaze to the center. Super. And just noticing again how that breath is within our body. We're going to come into the Om sound, which you may be familiar with. It's classically, it's classic yoga kind of vocalizations. That's where we're going to start with. Now in the Om sound, it's actually split into 3 parts. The first part of that sound is connected to the past. So that's an ah sound with the mouth wide open. The middle is the present, which is an ooh sound, and the mouth is circular. And the last of that, the mouth purses together. It's the taking us into the future. We want to focus on those sounds being equal. So you've got an ah, ooh, a bit slightly lower than that. So we're going to try that 3 times, and you can join in if you feel comfortable. Please do try. No one can hear you unless you've got something or someone in the room. So breathing, noticing that in the inhalation, the diaphragm drops down and flattens. On the exhalation, that arches. And on the next inhalation, fully emptying the lungs, inhaling. Inhaling. Letting that end sound vibrate within the skull, emptying out all of the breath. And just notice how that sits with you. And with further practices, we will extend what we're doing there and extend the exhalation. So bringing the hands into a mudra with the thumbs pointing out to the sides. We're accessing the lung meridian here. We're going to pop the thumbs, they're pointing around the back. We're just coming to the lower ribs around the mid-waist. Coming into Sharira mudras, relaxing the shoulders and noticing if the hands are moving apart on the inhalation and coming together on the exhalation. 3 times here, inhaling, exhaling. And if you're finding that the belly's not drawing on the exhale, it might be that you are doing some flipped breathing. Really focus on inhaling, letting that expansion come in, softening the belly and exhaling. Then we're going to creep the hands up into the armpits. Again, the thumbs are tucked under the armpits here and the fingers are coming together. So they're not pointing up towards the ceiling, the shoulders are out, or the elbows are out, the shoulders are relaxed. Inhaling into that space, into the rib cage, exhaling. Inhaling, feeling that expansion, the intercostals opening. Exhale, drawing together. Inhaling and exhaling. And then we're going to move the hands to the back lobes of the lungs. So the arms are coming overhead and being placed on the shoulders. So if you can reach the scapula, great. So it might be the case that it's really tricky to get there. So in which case, just touch to the top of the shoulders. Inhaling into that area. Exhaling. Can you feel movement under those hands? Inhaling. Exhaling. One more inhale. And exhale. And then removing the hands from the shoulders. We're coming into this steeple position, which is a mudra. So the middle fingers, this is so tricky. The middle fingers come together. I don't know if you can see that. The middle fingers come together in a steeple. Super. The thumbs are actually sticking out and the other fingers are wrapped. So let me come closer just in case you need that visual. This is what it looks like. And we're going to swirl this mudra so it's directed into the sternum or the breastbone. Relax those shoulders and press the thumb into the lower part of the rib cage and the middle fingers to the sternum. Relax the shoulders and breathe into this space. Inhaling. Exhaling. And you might be coming into Ujjayi or ocean breath quite automatically here, hearing the sound of the breath as it enters, with a slight tightening around the glottis. And exhale. One more, inhaling. And exhaling. And swiveling those hands out, that's slightly awkward around the wrists position. We're going to come into all fours. So remove any props that you need to and swivel around onto an all fours position, spreading those fingers wide. So we're pressing the ends of the fingers down into the mat. I can't say that enough, I promise you. We're spreading through the thumb, through that little pinky, pressing down so we get the suctioning up around underneath the hand to protect the wrists. And this may feel quite achy underhand, and I know it does for me. So let's just rock backwards and forwards. And if you need to bring the knees further away from the wrists, please do. Rocking backwards and forwards, bring the hips all the way back to the feet and rocking over. Lovely. Breathing into this. Noticing what's occurring, and then we're going to swivel the fingers from side to side so they're pointing outwards and we sway right to left And then swivel the hands back on ourselves. You might not want to put too much weight into the wrists here. Just tentatively explore. Coming into those tiny little muscles that get so tight with that sense of RSI that we get around our wrists and our hands. Lovely. And swivel those fingers, they're coming forwards to come back into that lovely hand position. Make sure the knees are directly under the hips and the feet spread. Coming into bird dog, thinking about a lengthening coming about between the top of the head and the base of the pelvis. Going to inhale and reach across the midline of the body. Coming into this balancing asana, bird dog. Inhaling. Exhaling, and know if you're crunching into your lower back, you want to ground the tailbone down towards the mat slightly. We don't want to cut off that energy from the spine completely, but sometimes we do need to protect the lumbar. And then on your next exhalation, we're going to draw the elbow knee together if this feels right for you. On the exhalation, then on the inhalation, reach across the midline of the body. Exhale, drawing knee to elbow. Inhale, reach, and then we're going to do one to the outer reaches this time. So coming to the outer reaches of the body like a lizard. Just coming back to the center, release right hand and left knee down. Coming to the opposite side, inhale, reaching through this dorsiflexion, sole of the foot, middle finger. Exhale, adjust yourselves if you need to. Noticing how the body's feeling, hopefully very easeful and steady. Exhale, elbow to knee. Inhale, reach across. So we're lengthening across the midline of the body. Exhale, elbow to knee. Inhale, reach. And then this time we're going to exhale and come to the outer reaches so the elbow and the knee come out. So we're like lizards. And reach. Super. And then come back to your center neutral position. Let's extend out the hamstrings. So bring the right foot out to the back of the mat. I'm just going to adjust myself because I need some more space. And explore the backs of the legs here and how tight they may or may not feel, keeping the pelvis nice and steady. Pressing down through the heel here, and then bring the knee in and come to the other side. Exploring how tight you may or may not feel around the back of the legs. So this is going to be really key for a later standing balance. Lovely, and bring that foot in. Option here, carry on working like that, or you can come into your plank, spreading through those fingers, and coming into a lovely, easeful and steady plank, maybe rocking through the feet, exploring the fingers, and by all means, come into an all fours, swapping over the legs, if that works better for energy levels today. Lovely. And bring the knees back in. So we're now going to explore the forearm stand element. So upper arm strength is really key, and another thing we work with lots in yoga. Coming into the Sphinx arms, you want to make sure that your elbows are down, the hands are down, you come onto your forearms. It may be the case, and if you're not familiar with this shape so much, that clasping the hands is more secure for you, in which case you come into this position, you've got this lovely V shape for extra support. So you've got two options there. Now we can explore in the same fashion what it is to come into one leg, exploring how that feels. And you want the neck to be fairly free and easy here, just gazing down at the mat. So don't do what I'm doing and swivel the head round. It's not great. It's not great for you. And then bring the knee back in. The next time we can explore bringing both knees off the ground and come into forearm plank. Breathing into bellies. So if you find the breath has become hampered, or indeed if you are holding your breath, it means that we're taking this a little bit too far. We want to breathe. In which case you can move in and out with the knees, exploring this quite gently. And this is really the way to gain strength in a comfortable and easeful fashion. Lovely. And then we're going to bring our hips onto our feet and come into what I call child's reading pose. This is for our Brahmari breath. So we're utilizing again the humming aspect of the vocal diaphragm, and we'll be covering our ears, either with the thumb or the full hand. And again, it's a focus on that long exhalation, exhaling all of the air out. So inhaling quite freely, let's come into 3 of these. Covering the ears, exhale and hum like a bumblebee. Inhaling. Inhaling. At the end of the last of the Brahmari, bring the hands down to the ground. Just notice how that may have changed things, albeit a very short interlude. And we're going to come back into that hand stance with the forearm stand that works for you. But we're going to come up into dolphin. Key thing here is that the head is hanging heavy and your neck is comfortable. Pressing down through the arms, and you're releasing up so the hips come up towards the sky. The head dangles down so the crown of the head is hanging freely. So depending on your arm proportions, it might be the case that the head is down on the mat. See if you can press up, lift. Find that sense of sthira and sukha, more steadiness and ease, spoken about in the Yoga Sutras. And you can explore this for however long you like. So obviously, if this is feeling fresh and new, bring the knees down, rest, and tentatively come in and out of your dolphin. And this is lovely prep for any arm stands that you may or may not do. We're inverting ourselves here, so the heart is above the head, and then coming back down. Now, if we had more time, and I think we will explore this in the 6-week session, we'll come into a one-legged version of that. So just coming down into all fours, and we're going to transition into prone. So by all means, knees, chest, chin down like this, or come through plank and your chaturanga, where the elbows draw in towards the rib cage, and we scoot ourselves forwards and rest the tops of the feet down to come into crocodile, crossing the hands over in front of us, resting the side of the face down, ease and wiggle the hips. Swap the gaze to the other side, so not forgetting the other side, and wriggle. Super. So we're going to come into locust, and we'll focus on the legs first of all. So grounding down through the front of the body. We want to lift through the legs. We're going to do both together. So we're lengthening across the back of the body and lifting the legs off the ground. Breathing down through the soles and keeping the cheek down onto your little cushion. The arms, exhale, release. Now we're going to try the upper body. So let's bring the hands to the sides of the hips. The neck is long, so the drishti and the gaze is down at the mat. Lift the front of the body. Lovely, really focusing on those back muscles. And release. Let's do both of those elements together. Wriggle the hips first to make sure you're relaxed and you're not holding on to any tension. And lifting through the legs and the top of the body, lengthening here, exploring a sense of length along the front of the body. And this necessary contraction and strength along the back of the body. Gazing to the front of the mat and not lifting with the chin. It's very tempting to lift with the chin, but we want that neck to be nice and long. And release. Bring the hands to underneath the shoulders and creep yourself back into child's pose, bringing the knees together to come into a lovely flexion. Really breathing into the back lobes of the lungs here. Bit of back breathing, so important. Lovely. And then exploring, reaching with the arms as far as possible. We're going to come into a flow where you can just explore, allowing for the hip points to release down to the floor, down to the ground, utilizing gravity. And we're very gently, and you might want to move the hands if the spacing isn't quite right. Transition between those 2 points, remembering to open around the fingers, and we are moving from flexion into extension to come up into an upward facing dog. So this space and this movement is coming about around the breastbone. So the breastbone is opening, shoulder blades come back together without forcing anything. Neck is free and easy. How does that feel? Really be cautious around the lumbar area. So if the extension isn't wanting to come in through the thoracic and the lumbar is experiencing a lot of a crunching sensation, come back into your child's pose, come into a little rocky place and explore the flexion there. So for some of us that can feel fairly strong. We're aiming for a sense of compliance in the spine where the thoracic has as much freedom as perhaps the lumbar. Super. So just breathing into the back of the body here. And we're going to prep ourselves to come up into downward dog. Tucking the toes under, hands out wide, maybe with a turn of 30 degrees for each fingers to the side of the mat. Taking the weight into the legs, and the head is going to dangle and just follow through so the gaze comes up to the knees or thereabout. As we take the weight into the legs and come into your downward dog. Inhaling, coming up onto toes, exhaling, bringing the heels down. Inhaling up onto toes, exhaling, heels down. And we're going to take some moments in this place to really feel into the jaw and what that holds on to. So the mastoid and the TMJ, I want you to wiggle the lower jaw and create some really bizarre faces. No one's watching. And gurn. So we're opening and closing our mouth and wiggling the lower jaw from right side to left side. And see if you can stick your tongue out as far as you can. So we're going to come into lion's breath, Samastah. Inhaling and exhaling in a free fashion. Samastah is the emptying out of the exhalation from the lungs with an extended tongue and the eyes rolled back. So again, no one can see you, so do play with this here. Inhaling. And another opportunity, if you don't have a sore throat, you can do that one again. Inhaling. Exhaling all of the debris from the lower lungs. And we're going to transition. So dropping the weight into the left foot, opening up into a three-legged dog, spiraling the knee towards the nose. And let's transition to bring that foot to the front of the mat. We're coming straight into a high lunge. Just adjust the back heel if you need to, grounding down through the front leg and coming up into high lunge, but Anjali Mudra here. So the thumbs are coming into the sternum, shoulders relax and breathe. Explore how this feels in your body. And if you want to reduce the lunge, you can. The hip point at the back here is lengthening. Make sure that knee is directly over the ankle and not further. Super. And we're going to transition again. So bringing the hands back down. We're going to bring that leg towards downward dog. Lovely. And then open up through three-legged dog and draw the knee in towards nose to transition. And you might find that you need to use your hand to help this transition. That's absolutely fine. Adjust the back foot, ground down through that footprint at the front, come into Anjali Mudra and the high lunge. Breathing and exploring that hip at the back. How does this feel in your body today? Lovely. And then bringing the hands down, you can either bring that back foot to meet the left foot at the front into Uttanasana, or you can bring the foot back into downward dog and jump in between the feet. Whatever you do, it's a transition to come into Uttanasana. Make sure the feet are slightly hip width apart. Head dangles heavy. Sorry if this is affecting the mic. Dangling the head, drooping down towards the ground. Bend the knees slightly to take the weight there. Lovely. And then we can bring the hands to either elbows as we ground down through each footprint and release the vertebra, stacking them one on top of another to come up into Tadasana, into a lovely standing mountain pose. Last thing that comes up, of course, is the head coming into your position. Now, if you want extra challenge for your Tadasana today, I recommend coming into Samastah, where you're literally reducing that point of contact to 1 by bringing the feet completely together. If you do come into that place, just notice if you're holding in the knees and the hips, if that automatically comes into something. So bring the hands to the heart space, thumbs pointing in towards the breastbone, coming back into your diaphragmatic breathing. So a few stages for you in your balance today, and by all means, you can stay in Tadasana if you want to. You might need a wall or a chair. We're going to come into quite a strong standing pose. The first position that we're going to play with might involve just bringing the knee up towards the chest. So we can explore that. How is that for you today? How is that for your balance? Knowing that your drishti or your focal point will help you. Lovely. So that might be one place to work with. The next place is whether you can gather, and if you've got socks on, please take them off. You can gather your forefinger and your middle finger around your big toe. How is that for you today? Now try not to come into a place of tension. If you can stay relaxed here, you will find your balance is much more effective. Now it might be the case that you can extend the leg into extended toe to hand pose in front of the body. And you might want to explore that. By all means, hold onto a wall or a chair. Use the support that exists. So this is strong, right? This is in itself something to work with. And if you just want to be here, you know, that's all good. Now, the next place to explore, and we can do it with the bent knee, is to come into rotation. So for those of you who have extended the leg, now this is where it gets tricky because the gaze is coming to the left hand and you're spiraling out to the outer reaches of the body. Breathing here into bellies. And maybe we bring that leg to the front and come out. Something to play with. And we're going to bring that foot back down. Bringing now the left foot up. How does it feel to gather the knee in? That can feel nice and juicy in the hips. Or perhaps we're going to bring the fingers around the big toe and explore how that is within the hips. Lovely. And then if we're there, we can bring our hand out to the side. So we're all going to be in different places and spaces within this. Bringing the gaze over to the right hand. Please do use a wall if you need to. And notice the wobbles. Don't take yourself too seriously. And draw yourself out of that wonderful Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana pose. So that might felt familiar to the one we normally do on our backs. So again, taking the weight into, which side are we on? Left side. How does it feel to extend and rotate within the hip here? How's that for you today? Okay, so can you do that and then externally rotate the hips and bend at the knee, come into your figure of 4. Dorsiflexion of the foot to protect the knee. Something to work with maybe here. Or indeed, you can see if you can forward fold so the elbows are resting onto the shin. Figure of 4 balance, noticing all the little adjustments taking place within the foot and exploring this wherever you are. So you may be here, wherever you are. And then fold yourselves out, release the leg. Really notice how that left foot is feeling, because it will have been doing lots of adjustments to balance. You know, there's little micro adjustments the muscles make. So you might need to just rotate into the ankles and the toes in the opposite direction. Really do attend to any sensation that takes place within your body. So we're going to come to the right side now, grounding down through the right leg, bending the knee, and explore that movement. How are your hips? And you know you could be with this, and you can be with this with a wall. Or you can come into a slightly more static place, remembering to breathe, coming into your forward fold, dorsiflexion of the foot to protect the knee. Maybe you're working just with that. Or maybe you're coming into a fold. Wherever you are, breathe. And if you're holding your breath, maybe come back, rewind the film and come to a place that feels more spacious. Lovely. And then release. Super. And we're going to come up onto the toes, bend the knees, and transition to the ground. So we're going to come into Kapalabati, full Kapalabati this time, so in a seated position. For some of us, we might want to be in a kneeling position over a bolster, and the height is really good to have underneath the hips. So you want to be nice and free around the diaphragm and the spine and the hips, because that's all interlinked. So the iliopsoas that connects the lower area of the body and the upper lower edge area of the body is connected to the diaphragm. So you really can't isolate elements of the body from one another. So contraindications for full Kapalabati: high blood pressure, anxiety, panic attacks. And obviously, as I said, if you have a hernia, you need to be cautious. This is a Kriya, a cleansing technique, and I've read about it in medieval literature, but it certainly stems to earlier than that time. So the reasons we do this, and you might want to just test your nostrils for the amount of mucus you have around that area. It cleanses the nasal passages, drains the sinuses, eliminates accumulated mucus. It strengthens and increases the capacity of the lungs and intercostal muscles, removes bronchial congestion and spasm while helping to relieve asthma, removes stale gases and old oxygen in the lungs, which a lot of them do. The lion's breath is also for that reason, due to the forced exhalation. It massages the intestine, stomach, liver, spleen, heart and pancreas through movement of the diaphragm and abdominal contractions, and strengthens your abdominal muscles and improves digestion, refreshes and invigorates your mind and increases alertness as a result of the increase of oxygen to your brain. That's really the key point, is the skull shining breath really creates this sense of alertness, the shine at the front of the head. So I want you to look out for that. If you've got that, that's great. Make sure your shoulders are nice and relaxed for this practice. And you can come into all fours, which we've been practicing before. Remembering this is a pumping action where you're contracting the abdominal muscles, and I will show you. You'll get to see, unfortunately, my belly, and forcefully exhale from the nose. Everything is done through the nose here, hence these. So let's try our first round. I'll do a demonstration because we're seated and you might be able to see what's going on. The feedback of the hand around the belly can be really helpful if you're not familiar with this practice. And I'm just going to do 10 or 20 as a demonstration, and then we'll practice together. So inhaling freely, exhaling, inhaling. After the last exhalation, a long inhale comes in. One of the key points about Kapalabati, it's a forced exhalation, drawing in around the abdominal region. The inhalation is an automatic response of relaxation, so you allow air in. If the automatic inhalation doesn't come in, it's more of a hyperventilation. So if you find yourself doing that, just stop and then try again. It's a lot easier to practice on all fours because gravity is helping for you to relax the soft belly on the inhalation. again, you can bring the hand to the front of the belly. So we can try 3 rounds of 10 or 3 rounds of 20 or 3 rounds of 30 if you're practiced and you just want to go with this. Inhaling, exhaling, inhaling. If you're having a break after your last, whether it's 10, 20 or 30, allow for the inhalation to come in. Notice how you feel. And then come back for another round. So inhaling, not a full inhalation. And you may notice that actually the abdominal contraction is fairly new and therefore feels like quite a lot of work. And this can be a subtle contraction. It doesn't need to be a full pump. And it's really about building this up over time. So coming to the last round if you want to. Otherwise, you can just sit and notice the breath. Inhaling. And wherever you are with that last round, you may notice that you are tiring. You may notice that perhaps the inhalation wasn't coming in as effectively as you would have liked. And that's literally just due to relaxation on the inhalation. So that's really something to be worked with. Noticing how you're feeling, whether you feel like energy has risen towards the front of the head. Just noticing anything that has come about with that practice. And obviously you can let me know if you want to at the end of the session. Lovely. Removing any props. I can put my belly away now. Removing props, we're going to come to rolling. So rolling along the spine, but coming to a seated position. So rolling 3 times, just noticing how the spine is, giving it a bit of a massage. But then we're going to come to seated with the legs in front of us, coming into Janu Sarasana, grounding down through the sitting bones, lifting up through the spine, bending the right leg to come to the inside seam of the leg here. So it looks like this. And if you want to put some padding under the knees, please feel free to do so. We're coming into a forward fold. So we're folding from the hips. There's almost a 25-degree angle towards the outer reaches of the toes to come over. And if you want to bring yourself down onto the elbows, or if you're purely with the hands down, focus on the lengthening of the spine, the hinging coming about through the hips. Softly folding. And if you want to come into an extension where you drape yourself over the leg at the last point, feel free to do so as we're coming to the end of the practice. And although we may have energized through Kapalabati, we're now winding down. Lovely. And then scrolling ourselves back up and swapping over. So the right leg now is coming out. Extend those toes up towards the ceiling and bend the left leg out to the side. And that foot comes to the inner seam, and it can be further down towards the shin if that works for you. lengthening through the breastbone. So the breastbone is heading towards the toes and coming to the other side. And then perhaps draping over the leg here. Breathing into the back of the lungs, inhaling and widening the rib cage. Exhaling and allowing for perhaps more space to come about. And more of a forward fold. So these forward folds are said to be incredibly calming and vata balancing. And you've got in Ayurveda, you've got the 3 doshas, Kapha, Pitta, Vata. Vata being connected with a sense of the wind. So if you're feeling like your mind is dispersed, these forward folds can be really useful. And then inhaling, drawing yourself up. We're going to come into Ardha Matsyendrasana. So just pop the leg over to the side of the outer leg if the sitting bones are still grounded. Otherwise, if you're finding your sitting bone is coming off the ground and lopsided, you can bring the foot inside, just in front of the hip point. If you want to bend that leg, for whatever reason, that might be preferable to come into Ardha Matsyendrasana, half of all the fishes in this fashion, you can do. So you've got 3 places to be. As long as the sitting bones are grounded, you can inhale and lengthen the spine, exhale, rotate and come to the left. So we're coming into a closed twist. So the twist is coming into the leg, the upper leg here. Inhale, lengthen spine, exhale, rotate. Gaze drops to the side. Inhaling and exhaling. And by all means, you can wrap the hand around the knee, or you can pivot the elbow and come into a stronger bind, looking over the left shoulder. Wringing out those abdominal organs and allowing for fresh blood to flow. And then on the next inhalation, we're going to come through the mid-center and come into an open twist to the other side. Remember, those sitting bones are grounded. Inhaling and waving to your imaginary friend. And exhaling and rotating. About 3 breaths on this side. Inhaling, allowing for belly to soften. Exhaling, rotate. On your next inhalation, come back through the center and unravel the legs. So if you haven't already got your legs straightened, you'll want to bring that out to the side. This time we've got the left leg out. You can come into the first position, the second position, or you can bend that leg underneath the buttock. Another thing is to be mindful that the foot is actually a footprint on the ground. Lovely. So make sure those sitting bones are happy and balanced. Inhaling through the spine, exhaling, rotating into your closed twist. Perhaps the elbows coming to the side of the knee or the arms wrapped around. Inhaling and exhaling to rotate. Inhaling, creating space in the spine. Exhaling and rotating around the chest. And you can wriggle and move into this space. It's a fairly feline place to be. And on your next inhalation, you're going to come through the center and come into an open twist. Exhaling as you come all the way over. Again, you can bend the elbow and wave. As you see in the classic sculptures from hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years ago, and they're amazing, they tend to be waving, their arms tend to be up in this fashion. Inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, and inhaling to come to the center. So we have a little bit of time for an inversion of your choice today. If you're menstruating or your energy levels are not inclined to come into a shoulder stand, if you have a headache, for instance, you will want to come into a gentle inversion. So Helen, maybe come into a gentle inversion if you've still got that headache. Coming into legs up the wall, use the sofa. Otherwise, you can explore the rolling action. And if you've got no eye problems as well, come into pose of tranquility, which is that lovely balance between the heavy pelvis and the feet. Or you can come into your shoulder stand, where the legs come up and the feet are flat towards the sky. The hands are positioned so the elbows are together to protect the weight. You have those positions, and indeed, if you want to come into plow, and that's something that you practice on a regular basis, we're going to be here for a minute or so. Come into a space that works for you, and I'm just going to come and have a look and make sure everyone's okay. So your choice, really. When we come into in-person sessions, it's much better for inversions because we can go through a supported shoulder stand, and I'm here to assist in a more physical fashion. Obviously, I won't come over and touch you because that's not socially distanced. So if you want to come into whatever version that feels comfortable for you. So I can see Catherine looks very happy in her shoulder stand. Just make sure your elbows are nice together. They always need to be more together than you think they need to be, I find, in shoulder stand. Gina, you look happy. I hope your neck is okay with that cushion there. I'm sure you have adapted to make yourself feel comfortable, and I can see Julia's happy up in her shoulder stand. So wherever you are, just allow for your body to be where it needs to be. And if you're doing a sort of legs up the wall Apanasana movement, that's great too, where we bend the knees. And if you've come out of your shoulder stand, you can come into windscreening. So you allow for the knees to come over to the sides and the hands to the sides like this. So for those who are thinking about coming out of their inversion for shoulder stand, visualize the process and set an intention to come out as slowly as possible. Really feeling in between the scapula and the shoulder blades so the rhomboids get that lovely attention as you roll out and all the way down the spine. So each vertebra are getting ironed out. And then when you do bring the hips down, you can bring the gaze up slightly so you don't get a sense of whiplash. We're going to come into windscreening. If you want to come into Jatara Parivriti and be less flowy and more of a fixed rotation, we can come into Garandasana legs. So the right leg is over the left leg, arms into T shape, and rock the knees over, Jatara Parivriti. And when we've got the knees over, and they may not be all the way over to the ground, wherever they are, see if the gaze is happy to look over to the opposite side. Finishing this lovely S shape in the spine. Noticing how the neck is. How is your neck now? What changes have taken place within your nervous system? Allow for that breath to come in, especially under the armpit here. And if the gaze is not content where it is all the way over, you can gaze up towards the ceiling. So prepare to come out of your rotation. Simply gaze up at the ceiling, ground down through the arms and bring the legs out. So if you've come into Garandasana legs, you'll want to fold the legs in the opposite direction. It may be the case that the knees are just together for your rotation. And then you rock onto the other side, gazing to the opposite hand. Your arms are in a T shape or thereabout. And the knees rock over to the opposite side. So I'm just going to come up to seated because I can't rock over to that side because I've got the thing in the way. Really breathing into the side of the rib cage here, feeling that openness and that movement. There is always this dynamic movement within the body. As still as this position might seem externally, internally there's a lot happening. There is a lot being consolidated. And then rolling yourself back into your center. Gaze comes up at the ceiling. We're going to adjust and transition into Shavasana. Coming into a lush Shavasana and bringing a blanket on top of ourselves. If we think we're going to get cold, we'll be here for 5 minutes, not too long, so you might not get too cold. You might want some padding under the head to reinforce the lengthening of the neck. And if you've got space, really take up space and be a starfish. Widen those legs, allow for the femur to roll out of the hips and the arms to roll out to the sides, rolling out of the shoulder socket. Lifting the pelvis if you need to and adjusting tailbone to flatten lumbar if that's required. Or grounding down through the elbows and lifting to bring the scapula together and draw the shoulders away from the ears. That can feel really lovely. Really allow for your body to sink down into the earth beneath you. How much can you trust your body to let go? I mean, that earth, that ground is not going to be going anywhere. It's always there. There is always some reciprocity that can take place with us, the earth and the air that we breathe. And as an option, and you may not be inclined to do this at the end of the session, we're going to do a short tense and release. So sometimes it's not possible to notice where we are tense until we tense it further, because that tension can be so habituated that we're not aware of it. So we need to make ourselves become aware of it for it to be released, which is the point of the tension and release. So we're going to start with the feet. I want you to tense both feet, tense them and release. Come to the shins. Tense the shins, contract the muscles around the lower legs and release. Around the buttocks, around the pelvis, I want you to tense the buttocks and the pelvis and release. Release some more. Around the abdominal region, tense, contract those abs, release. Release. And around the arms, the upper arms and the lower arms together. Engage the muscles, tense, release. And the hands. Squeeze the hands together, nice and tight. Building up tension, release. And with the face, we're going to scrunch the face up so it's squeezed together, real gurning going on here, and then release. And do the face again, perhaps with the jaw. Again, if you rock the lower jaw against the upper jaw, releasing into the mastoid or TMJ, release, release. And then focus your attention to your eyebrow region and the upper head. So around third eye center. Focus, concentrate on that area and see if you can release. So that may be the difference between a drishti, a focal point, moving towards a peripheral vision. That might be too subtle at this point. Just notice if you can tell the difference between those textures. And just simply be. Within the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras from 400 CE, there's a lot of dualistic language that is employed to try and make sense of what is being said. And that is the case with language and with experience. Sometimes you need to bring to mind the opposing force or the opposing energy to be able to utilize and bring those energies together to yoke the body and the mind. So you have lots of that in Hatha Yoga. You have the sun and the moon. You have the right and the left, the Ida and the Pingala nadis, the light and the dark, the fullness and the void, So as we come out of this relaxation, we're going to come into a mantra. I'm going to chant that before we come up to seated, so you know what that sounds like. Lokah Samastah Sukino Bhavantu. Lokah Samastah Sukino Bhavantu. Lokah Samastah Sukino Bhavantu. May all beings be happy and free, and may my thoughts and acts contribute to the happiness and freedom for all. Bringing your attention and some movement into the extremities, wiggling the toes and the fingers. The end of the following sound from the singing bowl. I invite you to roll over onto your right side into a fetal position. And once you've made it over to your right side, at the end of the next following sound or nada, prop yourself up with your arms and come to an easy cross-legged position with the eyes closed. Really focusing, concentrating on the end of that vibration. And bringing the hands to heart center in Anjali Mudra. You have an opportunity to chant 3 times together if you want to join in. Hands to heart center, pressing thumbs into sternum, inhaling. Lokah Samastah Sukino Bhavantu. Lokah Samastah Sukino Bhavantu. Lokah Samastah Sukino Bhavantu. Bowing in acknowledgement of one another and the space in between. Bringing thumbs to third eye. Namaste.